Recording in progress.
All right, it is being recorded.
Everybody's in.
Calling the zoning commission regular meeting to order on the 7th of October at 7 o'clock. It is the 7th, right?
7 sharp.
All right, great. We are being recorded. This meeting is being recorded for transcription purposes only, and that the written minutes and attachments, if any, will serve as the official record of this meeting. And I suppose I can call the roll. Marzullo, here. Fisher, here. Schneider, present. Manley, here. And absent tonight, we have Ms. Crew.
She's virtual.
She is attending virtually, but is unfortunately a non-voting member because she's virtual. Then we have alternates Rubel and Arline are also excused absences this evening. In the audience, we also have Mr. Tom Wilson, zoning inspector Wilson, and Trustee Burns. Alrighty. So Trustee Burns, if you had some comments from Trustee Kalina you wanted to relay?
Yes, I'm sorry that he couldn't be here, but he wanted to relay this to the commission. The Kabbalah review will not be until November of this year, Kabbalah Farms. The alternative energy updates were filed today in the recorder's office. The planning commission did not recommend any changes to the service station language, so those will be considered after the comprehensive plan review. And finally, the conservation setbacks were more than triple to the highest amount in the county, and the perimeter setback were double.
All right, great, thank you. So yeah, that was definitely one of the things I wanted to get to with the chairman's report, but at the outset here, first, thank you to everyone on the commission for all the effort in putting in the text amendments. Ultimately, the language regarding the solar amendments we made, those passed without any issues. The setbacks on the conservation development were trimmed back from 500-foot setback to 300 feet. And our recommended changes on the service station were not, but were denied. Ultimately, it's staying as is. So now we can review the regular meeting minutes from September 2nd of 2021. Did everyone have a chance to review those minutes? There was one change that I noted, and it was actually on page 5 and 6. In the very last paragraph on that page, it says, it reads, Ms. Long described an article she found regarding a not-for-profit group renting to a group of minorities that went before the local zoning board. It should read renting to a group of juveniles that went before the local zoning board. Did anybody else notice any other adjustments? No? All right. So if there are no further adjustments on the meeting minutes, I would entertain a motion to approve as amended.
Approve the minutes as amended.
Moved by Mr. Manning.
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Fisher. All in favor? Marzullo? Aye. Yes. Fisher?
Yes.
Burns. I'm sorry. Schneider?
Abstain.
Abstain? All right. And Mr. Manley?
Yes.
Yes. All right. Motion passes. Yep. And also want to say that Trustee Augustine is in the audience.
Thank you.
And moving on to old business. Last month, we spent a lot of time talking about the subject matter list that we want to put on the agenda moving forward. And some of that is already on the new business, the short-term rentals as well as multi-unit buildings. I wanted to know or discuss with the commission here if there's anything else that we want to add to the subject matter list moving forward. Because I know we touched on quite a bit last month, but some of it we're holding off until the audit of the comprehensive plan is completed. Did anybody else have any other new items that have popped up in the last month that you'd like to include?
Bruce, I have a question.
Sure. Okay.
How long do you think this comprehensive plan is going to take?
Months.
Are we going to hold off everything until this is complete?
No, I think the one of the things that we want to move to relatively quickly is going to be the short-term rentals, the VRBOs, the Airbnb language to address that and make sure there's something in the resolution regarding that, as well as the multi-unit buildings. Those are things that we've seen some adjustments in the market as far as how properties were utilized, and we already have some verbiage in the resolution that semi-addresses it. And what I want to make sure we do is kind of close the loop on it, make sure that there's no ambiguity for the BZA or for Mr. Wilson when he gets called out on a complaint. It's not really open to interpretation at that point. And I think those are two issues that we don't need the comprehensive plan audit before we start moving forward. Okay, thank you. Mr. Mann?
No, are we gonna, on the multi-unit, we're looking at residential, commercial, or combination, or combination, well, all three?
Yeah, I'd say a little bit of everything. Right now, the multi-unit, really, I think what we talked about with the multi-unit, it isn't even just multi-unit, it's also multi-family. And that's where we got into some of the conversation with Ms. Rubel about we have, and something that was brought up from the audience about, there are plenty of organizations out there that rent a space and they put different groupings of people in it. And we just want to make sure that we have appropriate verbiage in there for what it is we're trying to do. And then specifically the multi-unit buildings, that's something that is authorized in some of the business district.
Right.
And so we got to make sure that we kind of firm that up as to what we're trying to get done. And rather than really diving into those new subjects with half the board in absentia, I'd rather kind of postpone that at least a month until we at least have a full commission of 5 people here to discuss it and kick around some ideas, unless there's anyone that has something that's burning on their mind they have to get out today. Okay. The other piece of old business is the reserve at Pine Valley, the landscape plan review. As I'm sure everyone recalls, we do have the reserve at Pine Valley going in on West 130th, next to the golf course across from St. Colette Church. Tom printed out this nice, this large one. Hopefully everyone in the audience can see it. As well as these here on the table. And ultimately, from what I've seen, I think the landscape plan looks excellent, especially when we're looking at this one with the sign. I think they've done a very nice job with it personally, so that the community can see it here. Speaking with Mr. Wilson before the meeting, he was quite impressed with the overall layout. And Tom, would you mind giving us a little bit of your feedback?
Well, as you notice on the large drawing there, there's trees to the north and south, and those are existing trees. There's a wooded area behind every lot, and so there's really, I mean, that doesn't represent new landscaping. It just represents what's there, and it's really nice. And the concrete street is done, and I would encourage all the commission members to take a drive down there and take a look at it. And then, as you mentioned, we've got as most subdivisions want a sign out front, and I'm waiting for a zoning permit for that. Because we, of course, we have some rules on how big that can be, but they're getting ready to start phase one pretty soon. And I laid a phase one in front of you there to show how many houses they're proposing and so forth. Thank you. And I might mention that just to remind you, this is in the R2 district.
Yes.
So the lots are smaller than they would be if they were below Babcock Road.
Yeah, and actually quite a few of the lots are larger than the minimum requirement
Absolutely.
in the R2 district.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was actually talking to Marcus, drove down there. Would recommend everyone doing it when it's dry. Backed all the way back out the road.
Oh, did
Because
you
there's no,
turn around?
it's muddy, and I'm not about to change that. So
Well, on the right side, as you get clear down to the bottom of the hill, they put some gravel in there.
not much.
Not much. If you're careful, you can turn around.
So on the sign, I think that this is a gorgeous concept as well. On the sign, I do have a little bit of concern. So this is on the north side, and the house that's on the north side sits back a little bit. I would assume that this light that they're putting on the post isn't any brighter than a normal light. But if it is, I would just be concerned about the light pollution emanating from that. But outside of that, I don't see any issues at all with this plan. If I recall correctly, I believe the parking lot also has some lights to the north of the golf course. Is that correct, Tom?
Yeah, it does.
But that would be beyond, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit beyond. Yeah, the house would be next.
No, that's a good point. I mean, I haven't really got the official zoning permit application yet, but we'll look at all that.
I would assume that it's just going to be basically light given off by a standard post light. But
Yeah.
and it'd be pretty simple fix, right, especially with the panes of glass. Even if you just black out one or two of them, yep, and it's no more pollution to the resident. Right.
Well, the light itself is going to be 22 inches in diameter, so it's going to be a nice light.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a million kilowatt
Exactly.
lumens.
Yes.
Okay. It will be okay.
Exactly. That takes care of the old business. As I said at the outset, I think this is going to be pretty.
I think for that, we still have to. So if I recall, we did the final site review 2 meetings ago for this. However, we actually did not vote to approve the final site review because we had to have the landscaping plan prior to it. So I think we now need to conduct a vote, right? Because you read through all of the checklists, but the one thing that was missing was the landscaping plan. And so as a result, we were making them come back.
The notes or the minutes, because if I recall correctly, if I recall correctly, we actually approved it pending this. So check it.
It was your motion. I remember that.
Yeah. In fact, I think you corrected that. 8 minutes from that meeting.
It's on our packet this time. It would have been on our last packet.
Yeah, I wasn't here last week, so I just opened it. If I recall correctly, yeah. So I should say yes. Public hearing.
Yeah, so the way it reads is, Mr. Schneider stated that they would approve on phase one with the requirement that they submit the landscape and light plan to the zoning inspector prior to initial construction. Mr. Fisher stated he agrees, but he thinks they can continue with construction and not allow for the landscaping and lighting construction to begin until they receive the approval. Mr. Bender stated that no construction will begin until at least November. Chairman Marzullo entertained a motion to approve the plat with a stipulation that the landscape and lighting plan is submitted and approved prior to installation.
Good.
And so it was moved by yourself, seconded by Ms. Crew, and we were all in favor.
Perfect.
So it is approved. I think to Mr. Wilson's point, now we're waiting on the actual, the permit, and then he'll go out and we'll get it done.
The permits for the sign, not
The permits for the sign,
not
yeah.
the landscape.
Correct.
Yeah.
But now we do have the landscaping plan, which does look very nice. Get the permit for the sign. I think they'll be able to move forward pretty expeditiously.
I can put a file away finally.
Yes, put that one away. I think we're good on that. And Bruce? Yes, that was correct. Okay. Yeah, we got that last month. Any other comments on any of the old business? Any questions on any of the old business from anyone in the audience? No? Great. Again, the new business we could delve into a little bit, the short-term rentals. But to Mr. Fisher's point, I think having Ms. Rubel here would be very beneficial, as she's already dealing with this in several of her daytime cases. And she would be able to provide us with a fair amount of insight. For the audience, some of what we're looking at for the short-term rentals are how to address VRBOs and Airbnbs. It's not necessarily something that's a tremendous issue right now, but it could be in the future, especially as agritourism continues to increase in popularity. What we're seeing in larger cities are folks that rent their home on a nightly basis, and ultimately their neighbors never know who's actually there, and there are noise complaints and all sorts of issues when you have transient renters as your neighbor. And that's something that we need to address in the zoning code, because there's really nothing in the zoning that addresses rentals in the township.
Would it make sense at some point to reach out to the homeowners association, because they could stop some of those problems that we're all aware that happen in some isolated cases?
We certainly can.
Because they could say no, it has to be owner occupied, type of thing.
I mean, we could certainly do that, and I think most likely the HOAs actually do have addendums in them that say something either owner occupied or 1 year of leases. I believe that's
Trying to remember, because I was involved when we redid ours a couple of years, 10
Yeah.
years ago. And I can't
We don't
remember.
have such a thing.
Well,
No?
we took a 6-page document and made it a 10-page document.
Hmm.
We were getting into problem with people and horses on
Hmm.
less than 2-acre lots, 1.5 acre
Mhm.
lots.
Hmm.
And a few other issues, but.
And that's definitely something that we can take that course of action as well.
Just a thought that we're getting.
I think it's still worthwhile to address it at the township level as well. Because as we know, there's still a tremendous portion of the township that is not subject to an HOA. And frankly, some of the HOAs go defunct.
Leave a lot to be desired.
Or have an inability to enforce their own regulations. Whereas if it's actually in the zoning resolution, we have something that
Right, I'd rather have it there, but
I think it would be quicker through an HOA. Did I see a question?
Yeah, so, there's quite a bit of familiarity.
Oh, if you wouldn't mind going up to the podium.
Absolutely.
I need you to give us your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Tom Vanover from 1388 Ridge Road. I'd like you to just elaborate on what makes you think the township actually has more ability to regulate. Your statement was that at the township level, you'd have more ability to regulate it as opposed to at an HOA or like a local. What enforcement? Biggest problem with legislation of this kind is it is unenforceable. It's hard to find when they're full-time rentals, when they're part-time rentals. So it seems like it appears that you have a plan on how the township resources would be allocated to enforce a piece of legislation that restricts, not even getting into, the reasons for restricting, but if you could just elaborate on that. That was just my quick question.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you for the question. Ultimately, when I say that the township is better suited to actually track that is no one is going out and searching out for zoning resolution laws. There's no like enforcement except when it's driven by a complaint. Now, if you're living in an HOA and you complain to the HOA, many of the HOAs have gone defunct. Many of the HOAs do not have the financial resources to actually enforce their bylaws. Whereas we have a staff on the township that is employed full-time that if there is a complaint, they can go out and try to rectify it.
Sure.
So Albert Velasquez, 1979 Pine Ridge Trail. A couple questions.
Sorry, what was the address?
1979 Pine Ridge Trail. First of all, I am a short-term rental owner, not in our township. What has caused us to want to legislate short-term rentals? Do we have an issue? Is the chief have an issue? Is he getting called out? How many of the short-term rentals, do you know how many short-term rentals there is?
We don't know.
There's 4. With about 60 to 70% occupancy during the year. My wife and I have been searching for an Airbnb location. Our township's very cost restrictive to actually grow, like the cities, Cleveland, Lakewood. Those are probably your primary issues that you have with the short-term rentals, but I don't see a problem. We have a pretty small township that has a very high cost per square foot. So it makes it very hard to run a profitable short-term rental. And I just don't see how there's a problem here. I mean, unless the chief has a whole other list of how we have issues, you start getting into property rights. Like we have 2-acre minimums, so people are distance from each other. So what people do with their own property seems to be a very hot issue in our township recently. But knowing that there's only 4, it seems like what is causing the restriction, and where do you want to go with that? Because there's a lot of being on this end of a short-term rental. I know there's a lot of ways around township restrictions, and it costs a lot of money for the townships and the cities to manage it. Like, you will have to dedicate someone. If you think it's going to be that much of a problem, one person won't be able to manage it. And where's that budget coming from? And who, so it just seems like, where you say you want to take care of it, but there's no elaboration of what that means. Like, are you trying to restrict short-term rentals? Are you trying to restrict the timelines, the amount of time someone can be in a short-term rental? Personally, we have some in suburbs nearby. Most of our people are staying longer than 30 days. People going to Cleveland Clinic, having surgery, and their family members live near our short-term rental. People building homes that stay in our short-term rentals 3 to 4 months. We have 2 that have stayed. That is our average, 2 to 3 months. They're staying there with their family while their home is built. So it just doesn't seem like we don't have that. Yes, we do have agritourism. Yes, the reservation, like, that draws a lot of people from all over the state to come here. But it's not like we don't even have a hotel in our township or a motel. It's not like this is if we had that much tourism, someone would have already planted a hotel or a motel in our township. So it's all based on the numbers coming in. So I would like you guys to elaborate on what you're taking care of it. You're talking in generalities of what you're going to do to short-term rentals or multi-use buildings, which is something else I have looked at in our township. And there's no, like, whose guidelines are you following? Are you following another township's guidelines on what their zoning did? Are you just going to come up with it on your own? Are we going to have some kind of committee that with people that subject matter experts on short-term rentals? I guess that would be my question is, where's this coming from? What are the issues? Because it's such a small town and it's 4 houses.
First, how do you spell your last name?
VELASQUEZ.
Okay. That was a lot of questions, and I appreciate that.
Well, because it's very, you're talking in generalities right now, and it scares small business owners.
That is the initial stages of any sort of text amendment, is talking generally,
right,
and figuring out. First off, you're saying that it's not a problem now. That is very dangerous to say for a zoning commission, because it's not a problem now. But in 2 years, by the time we actually get any sort of verbiage addressed and adopted, it might be a huge problem. And so that's where we're trying to look forward and say, all right, is this a problem? Could it potentially become a problem? Or is it something that we want to foster? And that's why we have to talk in generalities right now, because we need to suss all of that out as a team.
If I could answer some of that for you, okay, is that, first of all, as a zoning commission, that's one of our jobs, is to look into this and find out exactly how it works.
Right.
Secondly, most of the residences in Hinckley are single-family homeowners. Okay, once you start going into rentals and stuff, that's now a business. So now you're doing business work inside of a residential area. And we have to consult and figure out exactly how that fits into our zoning book, so that when somebody comes in with a request and it goes to the BZA, there's some teeth in the book to say, yeah, you can do this, you can't do that, or whatever. We're not here looking at stopping anything. We're making it so that it's actually legal to do it if it's required to do it. Or is this just a small one-time, one person doing it? If you have 30 people out there with rental properties, and the police are running around taking care of all of this stuff because there's nothing to say yay or nay. So that's why when you look at the zoning book, a lot of it is because of something that's happened in the past, and we try to resolve or remedy the situation so that in the future, right now, this is something new coming up. When we had the survey of the whole township originally, none of this was ever brought up. People didn't think about doing this. Okay, we're having different people moving into Hinckley. And this is why we, as a commission, we're gonna look into it. Now, you want specific answers right now, there is none,
Okay.
okay? Because it doesn't exist, okay? But, and sometimes we'll take a look at something and find out that it's something that doesn't need to be addressed, and we leave it alone. Sometimes it's something that needs to be really addressed and maybe looked into even more. And sometimes we have to get counsel, legal counsel, to find out whatever we look at, what the stipulations are. So it's more than just question and answer. Okay.
Right. I understand that. It just, obviously this is the first time it's been brought up, and there's, I'm sure a group of us that are concerned about.
There's a lot of people that do rent their houses.
Yeah.
And don't tell anybody.
Right.
We also see a lot of people that say in-law suites, which are actually illegal in Hinckley.
Mhm.
Okay. We are a township, and people should realize what a township is, other than when you say a city, Parma's a corporation. All your main cities are corporations. They're under a whole different Ohio Revised Code than what we are.
Right.
So,
I mean, I know there's been significant legal battles in a lot of townships and cities over this. So, I mean, because it affects property rights and it happens. And there's, being on this side, I know there's national groups that are helping short-term rental owners fight it, because it's getting to be where it's property rights. It's really what it falls to, is what can I do and what can I do in my property, and how long can I do it for? And
don't feel bad. Almost every single homeowner has that same problem with their neighbor,
right,
with everything else going on.
right. I know.
As we go down this process, please stay engaged.
No,
We need that expert input from people that are on both sides of this.
And I even my
We don't like to make decisions in a bubble.
the cost, I could tell you the cost to stay in Hinckley versus Strongsville, Brunswick, it's almost double to 3 times.
Mhm.
So your nightly rate is so high that it really, and I hate to use this, it calls out your issues you would have in Cleveland. And I mean, there's a house in Seven Hills that got just thrashed. High schoolers threw a party. What no one hears is that Airbnb came in and rebuilt the entire house for them. So, so I guess you just kind of, which was a great perspective my wife gave yesterday. So, I will stay engaged. I think it's
Please do.
something that seems to be property rights in Hinckley seem to be a hot issue. And, I feel like it's something that needs to be addressed or constantly monitored, that we're not, we fight so much for it not to become a city, yet we want to regulate it like a city. And so it's like, where do we really want to stand? Do we want to become a city, or do we want to stay a township and not regulate like the cities do?
No, and I think the longer you stay engaged with the zoning commission, you'll see the majority of us up here are very, very pro property rights.
Thank you.
Thank you. No other comments? All right. Yeah, sure. Come on.
Chairman Rizzuto, I just had one quick comment. We don't have a full-time staff member to facilitate anything like that, just so you know. I mean, Tom's part-time. We moved into 3 days a couple of weeks ago. We don't have a full-time staff member.
Renee Velasquez, same triple word score spelling of the last name.
And is it Renee with R-E-N-E?
Renee.
Thank you.
So I just want to re-ask the question, has there been incident with short-term rentals or rentals at all that needed to be addressed? Because that was a question that was asked and it just wasn't answered. So I just would like to know if there's been an issue currently with, because it had to have been looked at for a reason.
It was brought up in the last meeting because there have been incidences in areas surrounding Hinckley. It's not that, hey, you know what, we had this one incident and that's the worst possible thing we can get into as a zoning commissioner. Shoot, something happened and now we have to react to it and we're trying to put in this legislation and that's not what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is look at it from, all right, other communities like ours, what are some of the things that they're dealing with, that they're struggling with? Could they become issues for us? What are they doing well? I mean, and having the public engage on a regular basis is actually awesome. Just the same way 350 Hinckley has engaged with us for the last several years, and now we have some of the probably some of the best verbiage in the county as far as solar panel and solar electric in the resolution. So has it been an issue now? Not that I'm aware of, but that doesn't mean that it can't be in the future or that it will be.
Sure. I appreciate the obviously the proactive approach and not the reactive approach. I was just curious to know if there was any incident whatsoever. And for the record, nobody knows that there has been, correct?
And that's part of what we'll talk about as we develop this is, we'll see Inspector Wilson, has he had any comments provided? We'll see if the police have had any concerns that have been mentioned, because all that goes into the review process whenever we start looking at new regulations.
Sure. I mean,
There's been a couple incidents of renters over the last 10 or 15 years, and there's single incidents, noise, police went to the situation. That was the end of it, but it's not a big deal, but it has happened. To say it has never happened here is not correct.
Thank you.
So if I may, Tom Vanover again, I think the concerning part is that when it was originally framed, it was noise complaints and people in and out and transient. That was the initial statement, Mr. Chairman, of why we're talking about this. So those of us that are in the business, if the initial framing of the statement was to fix something based on noise complaints, transient people, and the neighbors complaining. Okay, so if that hasn't happened, that's great. If when we do start having the conversation, as long as it's an open and honest conversation, and we're not talking about necessarily the cities or villages around us, but really looking at other townships. The same thing for multi-unit buildings. As the owner of, the building right across the street, I believe we own 75% of the legal apartments in Hinckley, Ohio, and that number is 3. So to fight or to address a problem proactively is far different than fighting an imaginary dragon. Okay. And that's what I think we want to make sure of. We all know the condition of the old beverage store in 1388 Ridge Road 3 years ago. If our responsibility to the building, to the township, is to keep it full and to keep it revenue flowing, that may be renters in the building. That may be short-term rentals in the building. It might be hybrids of business and rental models, right? No people in the building, no revenue for the building, no revenue for the building. You get what you had 2.5 years ago. So that's where we're coming from as a concerned property owner who's made a substantial investment. If we're trying to address something else to solve what problems the other areas are having, we have to make sure that it's not going to affect what we've already got and our ability for the building to feed itself. Because if it does, we've seen that. That's not imaginary. We know what happens when a 180-year-old building in the center of Hinckley Town Center, when that building can no longer feed itself. We know what that looks like. That's just our fear, so that as the conversation it goes forward, and everybody in the township, everybody in the county, they've been great to us all along the way. And so, we have nothing, not a single negative thing to say about the process. Our concern is what happens after this may affect our ability, and now we're right back where we started from. So as long as we're all involved and it's not that issue, I think that we can continue to be part of the conversation, not some imaginary problem that could happen based on a YouTube video, right? But on real world things in the township, with townships our size and doing those sorts of that, basically just doing the work. So, thank you.
Absolutely. And to potentially leave some of your concern is yours already exists. So the regulations, your grandfather under the regulations that are put into place.
In all fairness, it depends on how you do them, right? Because this is township regulations. So we do not have an established short-term rental property across the street because there is no way in Hinckley Township to establish a legal short-term rental property. So, and then when we get further into the multi-unit building, obviously a brand new building will have one set of, depending on where it's at in its location, but there's no guarantees depending on how this legislation is crafted, that ours is grandfathered because there's no mechanism by which to establish it currently. So I appreciate the sentiment, but at the same time, how that gets done, how that soup gets made is very important because the letters in the legislation matter.
Absolutely, and that's genuinely what we spend the majority of these meetings are talking about specific verbiage. In fact, in the most recent text amendment, we were very conscious of the verbiage to make sure that we weren't creating grandfathered, basically legal non-conforming buildings, which means, okay, they're legally allowed to do that because they existed before the verbiage went in, but now once they stop doing it, they can't do it again. We're very conscious of that throughout the process, and we do not want legal non-conforming. We want everything to be legal and the right process. That's really what we're trying to do. Any other questions?
I'm just Ron Wada from 1575 Cooter Road. I was just interested, so you said to stay engaged with the process, because it sounds like you would like to have another member here of the zoning board in order to discuss this further. So how will this play out into the future? So will it be like the next meeting, or will it get put on the back burner and brought back in whenever?
Oh heavens, we'll be talking about this for probably the next year. When we did the proposed text amendment to the service station, we've been working on that verbiage for about 2 years. So it's a very methodic process. It isn't something that it comes through at lightning speed. It's very deliberate, and we take our time and try to make sure that we can dot all our I's, cross all our T's, because we definitely want to make sure that we're not stepping on people's toes, that we're not trampling on people. But at the same time, we want to make sure there aren't any zoning loopholes as there in the vernacular that a lot of folks are using. It's something that we tend to refer them as blind spots, because if there's a loophole, that means we're aware of it and we're ignoring it. That's certainly not the case of the commission. There are blind spots where, oh, I didn't even know I was vulnerable there. And so the more people that stay involved throughout the community, throughout the administrative piece, the more we're going to be able to see where we're vulnerable and where we can actually address it.
Right. So I'd like to stay engaged, but how would we know if it's going to be on an agenda?
The agendas are put out every month. I believe they're on the website.
They are correct.
Mm-hmm. So they're on the websites ahead of time. And generally speaking, anything that's not generally speaking all the time, if it is not resolved in a meeting, it is automatically pushed to the next month. So everything we're talking about tonight, we'll talk about again next month
Okay.
and the month after that. And then
Unless some urgent things come up, and then it will just get bumped.
And exactly, the old business, if we have several urgent things that need to be addressed,
It might get pushed back.
it'll get pushed, but if we have time, we do address it. I'm sorry, how do you spell your name, sir?
Wayda, Wayda.
All right, thank you. 1575 Cooper.
Yes.
And so further to that, we'll, even once we have some language crafted of some sort, we then have to vote on that language just to send it to the Medina Planning Commission. The Medina Planning Commission has to review it, provide us comments. We then have to have another public hearing, and then we're able to approve of it. And then it still has to go to the trustees as well. So that's probably a 3 or 4 month process, even once we have some language that's pretty close to what we think it should be. So it is a very long process.
So is the public hearing part of what you do in your monthly meetings, or is that a whole nother?
It's a different meeting. It starts at 6:30 on the same day as our meeting, but those will occur at 6:30, and then we'll roll right over to our normal meeting thereafter.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to,
Process.
I just wanted to know how the process worked.
I wanted to ask the trustee, do we still have that system where somebody like this gentleman can give a self-addressed stamped envelope with the topic involved to Suzanne, and she can send out to him that the next meeting they anticipate covering whatever this subject
Yes.
is? Okay.
Melissa Augustine, Hinckley Township trustee. I just want to announce that really quick, but to answer your question, Ron, you can email Suzanne and she'll put you on the list. And as soon as the agenda is put out, she will email you that agenda as she has a kind of a compiled list that she does that with. Typically, the zoning commission meetings are the first Thursday of every month. So mark your calendars, 7:00 p.m. Just for the record, in conversation with Police Chief Setner via text, we have had 0 complaints or calls as it pertains to Airbnbs or VRBO rentals.
He's had it. We've had a couple of issues over the years, but they weren't Airbnb. They were.
Well, over the years, just letting you know what
Is that regular rentals?
Police
or
Chief said.
Regular, so you're bunching, because you're.
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
Okay.
To the best of my knowledge.
And could we ask the
But they were all resolved with the police.
How many complaints we get from actual residential homeowners that are owner occupied, that same staff?
Repeat the question, Melissa.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time, Renee?
Could we get the response, to that same question, to responding to issues at the owner occupied properties? as well?
Regular properties. Actually, we just had a report that he presented at the last meeting, and I'll see if I can get my hands on it and I can email it to you. If you want to stay after, I can get your email. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Any other comments? No? All right. So, this is definitely something that we want to get the entire commission involved in on the conversation, especially the folks that have the industry knowledge and experience. Now, does anybody else on the commission have anything else they want to add before we move into the chair's report?
The only thing I was just wondering with this rental business is that in the cities, there's actually a place where they have to be registered, have rentals, they pay a fee every year so that they're on the record, so the police and everybody else knows what's a rental and what isn't a rental. I'm talking like homes, but
Yes.
if you're doing a quarterly or a weekend or something back to B&Bs and stuff, that's what the commission needs to look at, really, is how we would involve that without getting strung out forever, and also that it meets everybody's needs if it's going to happen. And now that it's really actually happening. So I'm just wondering how we're going to really look at that, because it's going to be involved.
We're wondering the same thing. Just so you know, we're wondering how we're going to look at that too.
Okay.
So for the chairman's report, emails and correspondences received Obviously, we went over the, first to begin with, went over the, what was actually approved through the text amendment process. Trustee Burns got us kicked off with Trustee Kalina's notes that we have the solar language was approved unmodified. The setbacks for conservation developments were approved with modification of, instead of 500 feet setback, it's a 300-foot setback off the primary thoroughfare. And the service station verbiage was left unchanged. After that, we did receive an email from 350 Hinckley asking us to make sure that we address the screening with regard to, I believe it was I and J. He was asking that we continue to look at this screening that is in the screening requirement for alternative energy sources that are currently in the book as potentially something that we can remove. And I think we did touch on that last month, but just wanted to follow up and give everyone that. There were several correspondences between myself, Mr. Wilson, Suzanne, and Chris regarding the estates at Kabbalah Farm. And obviously, as Jim said at the outset, that's not going to be reviewed until November. I believe they're still in front of the Medina County Planning Commission. Is that correct? Yes. All right, thank you. I also received an email from a man whose last name I can't even begin to pronounce, Steve Sapinski, maybe. And I sent it. He was asked about a lot that was for sale, and wanted to get some information about it. I forwarded him on to Tom. Tom was able to give him all the information that he was looking for. Haven't heard anything else regarding that. We also had some couple folks reach out to myself and the trustees to express their support for the text amendments, but it was also after the trustees had voted. Next, we had some conversations between really that I was just kind of CC'd on, so I don't know that it's necessary that I share them. And I again reached out to Joe Calabro to see when she and I can sit down. And I think she would actually be interested in getting potentially more members of both commissions to sit down together and figure out, all right, what are the sticking points for the BZA that we can try to tighten up on our side. And still working with Joe to see if we can make that happen.
I'm wondering if possible, on October 28th, we're having a meeting. I wonder if we can just tag, because they're supposed to come back too. If we can maybe.
I'll ask. That's a great idea. Good. Yeah. And that was actually the very next thing I was going to bring up was training for the zoning boards. We've been kicking around back and forth. All right, how are we going to try and do this? We did try and set a date last month and it didn't happen, unfortunately. Trustee Kalina kind of picked it up and ran with it. And now it is scheduled for October 28th, right here in the administration building at 7 p.m. So that is not a required meeting, but I would very strongly recommend everyone on the commission to attend if you're available. Additionally, we got some emails from Michelle Crew. She came up with some sunshine laws training that I would like to forward to the board. If anybody would like to take some online training about some sunshine laws, so we can have a little bit more understanding of just making sure that everything we do is above board and that there is complete transparency. I want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to take a look at that. And other than that, it was all emails regarding absences for this or for stuff that we've already addressed. We already touched on the text amendment trustee approval. And now comes something exciting. And Trustee Augustine, I actually, we already went back and forth on this one as far as the questions I had for it. Looking for a zoning commission member for the comprehensive steering committee. The trustees are requesting that someone from the zoning commission is involved in the comprehensive plan audit steering commission. And that's something that it would be a twice a month meeting. In all likelihood, it's not set yet. In all likelihood, it's probably going to be a weekday in the evening, and it's a volunteer that we're looking for. I think it's very important.
I'd be happy to do that.
Mr. Mann, all right, outstanding, thank you. That made that very easy.
Thank you, Mr. Manley.
Yes. I think it's very important that we have someone that is well-versed in zoning, involved in the process, not to necessarily guide it so much as just have the ability to talk about, all right, this is what's in the book now. And if you do that, it may potentially do this, and understanding the secondary and third order effects of any decisions or changes that people are looking to make. Additionally, we just touched the educational seminar. I really hope as many people as possible can attend. I believe, Michelle, if you're still out there in TV land, we may be able to create a private room. Is that possible, Trustee Burns?
Yeah, we can create separate rooms.
Okay. And since, Michelle, you might not still be on your feet, we might be able to have you dial in virtually. And that really covers it for me. Are there any reports from anybody else on the board? Anything you want to add? Mr. Fisher?
Nope.
Mr. Schneider? Nope. Mr. Manley?
No, not really.
Mr. Wilson, how about yourself?
Well, I have one thing tonight. We have a change of use for this small house that's up on Ridge Road. It's under contract to be purchased, and they're going to, the father and son that are purchasing it want to put an office downstairs and have a dwelling upstairs. And I've given each of you from our zoning book here, Section 7.5D, it says dwelling units. All residential units located above the first floor of a commercial or office building shall comply with the following requirements. The minimum square feet of living area for dwelling units with up to one bedroom shall be 600 square feet, and an additional 200 square feet shall be required for every additional bedroom. And we've looked at this, and they meet that criteria. Now, however, this is a conditional use. So it will go before the Board of Zoning Appeals on October 28th. I didn't feel it was necessary to have a site plan review on this because all of this is taking part within the house. There's no change to the lot or any buildings going up or anything at this point. So I'm hopeful we'll get a new business or two, and I just wanted you to be aware of that. It was going to happen October 28th. Yeah.
The first floor use is a permitted use, right? It's
The
just
first
the
floor
second
is
floor
office
apartment
space
that would
and
be the
it's
conditional
permitted,
use.
correct. Mhm.
Exercise, that was exercise space.
Well, it was exercise space. That's why it's a change of use, of course, because it's going from her yoga studio to office space. Yeah.
Yeah, and that yoga studio was just approved like maybe 2-3 years ago, I think.
No, I think it's longer than that, maybe 2-3 months ago, but I don't remember for sure, but.
Okay.
I think it was 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, it was before
Yeah, it's been a
COVID.
little
It was
while
before
ago.
COVID.
Yeah.
Before COVID, I'd say
Yep.
COVID's what ended it.
Yeah, I think so.
Anything from you, Trustee Burns, you'd like to add?
Yeah, just for the public's knowledge, and we've touched on it here, Michelle Cruz not joining us because we are now into a regular mode where we can't speak. Hospital 43 is on the floor call your representative, rate your representative, Sharon Ray. And if you're in support of this virtual meeting where the public as well as these officials can join remotely and, still be a part of this meeting, vote as part of this meeting, let her know that you're supporting that bill, because what it will do is bring us back to a place where all this technology can be fully utilized rather than half utilized. Give her a call. That's all.
Thank you. Trustee Augustine, anything you'd like
I
to
do not have anything. I'm really pleased that you selected Mr. Manley because he has been on several comprehensive plan committees and has been a part of that. So he will bring a wealth of experience and knowledge to that. So thank you.
He's definitely an asset to us.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I apologize because I see two be standing at the podium. I'm forgetting more than, sorry about that.
All right, and anything from the public? Any last comments anybody wants to bring up? All right, outstanding. Well, thank you very much. And with that said, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Moved by Schneider, seconded by Manley. All right.
Yeah.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Twice a month.
None. All right. And the regular meeting, October 7th, 2021 is adjourned at 7:59.
Recording stopped.